halls of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10, the 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tavon Austin.
But Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels feared to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride!
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
Leave no doubt tonight. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season.
And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
And now recorded from the CRW studios in Almost Heaven, West Virginia, it's the Country Roads webcast with your host, Jorden Cruz.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for episode 199. West Virginia fresh off a bye week, ready to attack conference play again as they get set to head to Stillwater and take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And we'll be providing our preview and prediction for that matchup. And joining me to help me do that, of course, my co-host, Brad.
What up, what up, what up?
Steven out on assignment this week, but he'll be back with us in short order as we continue to cover the Mountaineer football season. But before we get into the Mountaineer side of things, obviously with West Virginia off last week, we didn't have a game to review, so we didn't get a chance to go over the scores from the Big 12 games in Week 5. So real quick, we want to provide a quick recap of what went down within the conference last week. We had Oklahoma State and Kansas State matching up, of course. Kansas State coming out on top 42-20. Obviously of interest in this game, Oklahoma State now going to be coming off back-to-back losses heading into this one. BYU took down Baylor to remain unbeaten on the year, 34-28. TCU prevailed over Kansas, 38-27. Probably the most surprising result of the week, Colorado taking down UCF handily, actually, 48-21. Iowa State shut out Houston, 20-0. Texas Tech outlasts Cincinnati in a shootout there in Lubbock, 44-41. And then in the late game, Arizona coming out on top of Utah, 23-10. Utah getting upset there in the Big 12 there last week. So those are the results we had. Brad, any thoughts there on the action from West Virginia's bye week, what went down within the conference while we were off?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad we're not keeping track of these because my record for this week would not have been great. But it's all right, though. Yeah, surprising ones, man. Kansas, you're looking in a tough spot. It's tough to look at last week and not feel, I guess, weekend before last and not think about, how pivotal that game feels now.
Yeah.
And may even feel more so after this weekend if we win of, how big that game was to each program.
Agreed. Like you said, a lot of surprising results. I think, we all were a little bit wrong on Colorado maybe. I guess I got eat a little bit of crow on that one. But, hey, we were right about Utah being potentially a little bit overrated and coming in, flying high. Arizona handles them in that one. So they're starting off with a loss in conference play there as well. So definitely some surprising results. And I think the one thing still remains the case is that this conference is definitely wide open. So hopefully West Virginia can find their way into competing for a conference title throughout this season.
Because right now, what would you say? There's a couple unbeaten. There's 2-0 teams. Is that
BYU,
TCU?
And BYU and Colorado both undefeated in the conference, I think.
And Colorado's what?
Iowa State as well, I believe. So I think right now BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, the top three. Of course, West Virginia unbeaten in conference as well, but only the one game with the bye week last week. But yeah, definitely seems like a wide open race.
For sure. I'll say what we talked about it in our last game. I'll say Big 12 we're 1-0. The season could be new, could be fresh, could go on a run from here. This is really all that matters. So
definitely. Definitely. And going to have to go on the road here in Stillwater to try and pick up this next win. But West Virginia, like we talked about before, definitely has a chance, with this conference being so wide open. But got to continue to do the right things here and hopefully have a good performance here coming off the bye week. And let's get into that a little bit now, Brad. Let's talk about this matchup: West Virginia and Oklahoma State. WVU coming in 2-2 overall, 1-0 in the conference. Oklahoma State coming in 3-2 overall, currently 0-2 in the conference. Back-to-back losses to Utah and, of course, Kansas State. As we just mentioned there, it's going to be a 4 o'clock kick there on October 5th. It'll be televised on ESPN2. It's the 16th meeting all time between Oklahoma State and West Virginia. Oklahoma State currently leads the series 10 wins opposed to West Virginia's 5 wins. But West Virginia did win the last time they were in Stillwater back in 2022. But Oklahoma State, of course, coming out on top in the most recent meeting last season with the 48-34 victory. Of the 7 previous games played in Stillwater, West Virginia is 3-4. But as I mentioned, the last time they were there, they did manage to find a win there, 24-19 in 2022. Mike Gundy, still the head coach there of the Cowboys in his 20th season at Oklahoma State, has a great record there and an even better record at home, really, 98-25 when playing at Stillwater. So obviously a tough environment. Mike Gundy, performs well there. West Virginia going to have their hands full there. But Oklahoma State, as we mentioned, is coming off those 2 losses. But on the kind of negative side, I guess, of that, if you're going to look at a negative point, is Mike Gundy's only lost 3 straight games 3 times in his 19 seasons there at Oklahoma State, and it hasn't happened since 2014. So if West Virginia can find a way to win this game, they'll be, giving Mike Gundy his first, 3 straight losses in a decade. So that's kind of setting the table there a little bit. But before we get into the matchups and talk about each side of the ball, Brad, what's kind of your opening thoughts? West Virginia coming off this bye week, Oklahoma State coming off a couple of losses. How are you feeling about this matchup?
Yeah, I think that, again, we talked about West Virginia and Kansas. It's a pivotal game. I can't help feel, but this is kind of the same thing to it. Maybe that's just early season games really sorting things out. But, I don't think Oklahoma State's where they want to be at this point in the year, where they thought they might be. And so, whoever wins this one has a chance to really West Virginia's trying to build on what they've already got going. Oklahoma State's trying to stop their slide. And, it's really going to be a tell of which team's more ready. I will tell you, and I've mentioned it ahead of time, that the bye week actually kind of worries me. I know a lot of people say, hey, you got a bye week, you're ready to prepare for it. But you guys have watched the same football team I have over the last 5 years. Neil Brown has not done great coming off of bye weeks, and I think the only reason I know that is because I felt like every year up until this year I've said, Neil Brown, if anybody's going to have their guys ready, it's going to be Neil Brown, but it just has never materialized, and I've had to feel that quite a few times. So it's hoping that doesn't repeat itself, but the fact that we can walk into Stillwater and win can repeat itself. But that's my initial feelings about it, just hesitancy over it being a bye week, knowing if that's going to be even a positive for us, and then looking at, like you said, an Oklahoma State team that's wounded right now, and a Mike Gundy that usually doesn't typically lose this next game.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting spot because, like you said, you would think coming off a bye week you might have an advantage, but I think I'd feel a little bit better about it if Oklahoma State had managed to win at least one of those 2 games. Plus, the tough atmosphere of Stillwater. A lot of things that, kind of seem like they might be, in your favor, but really I think it's more kind of up in the air because Oklahoma State's going to come into this hungry. It's also, you got to look at Oklahoma State. Last season, I think they started kind of in a similar fashion, had 2 early losses, including, one they weren't expecting to South Alabama. And then they really found a way to turn things around and, rip off, 6-7 wins in a row after that. So you got to hope you're not the kind of catalyst that starts that up for them again this season, because as you said, it's a big spot. West Virginia trying to prove that they're, a contender in the Big 12. Oklahoma State trying to, not have that door closed on them, because I think you get 3 conference losses, you can almost kind of count yourself out of maybe making that Big 12 title game. So they're kind of fighting for their proverbial conference lives here in this game. So it's an interesting matchup for sure. And I understand where you're coming from, because off of bye weeks have not been, Neil Brown's strong suit thus far, but hopefully it's something that he can correct in this one. He's going to have to find a way to correct it and do it on the road in a tough environment where, going up against a really good coach in Mike Gundy. So it's an interesting matchup. A lot of things to talk about with it. So let's get down to the nitty gritty, talk about it on kind of each side here, Brad. Let's lead it off talking about the Oklahoma State offense going up against the WVU defense. As far as the Oklahoma State offense is concerned, offensive coordinator Casey Dunn in his 5th year as the offensive coordinator there at Oklahoma State, 14th year there overall. They're currently averaging 423 yards per game, putting them 6th in the Big 12. But they're only running the ball for 102 yards per game, which is kind of surprising. Obviously, with Ollie Gordon in tow, we thought that would kind of be their strong suit, but teams have really keyed on that. They're 14th in the Big 12 in rushing, but they have, made up for that with their passing offense, kind of by necessity, been slinging the ball around a little bit more. 321 passing yards per game, which puts them 3rd in the Big 12. Kind of worrisome, obviously, for West Virginia with the struggles we've had on the back end. And they are also 4th in the Big 12 in scoring, averaging 33.4 points per game. The players to watch out for in that Oklahoma State offense, obviously, Ollie Gordon. Yes, he struggled through the first few games here, only 334 yards through the first 5 games of the season, averaging 3.8 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns. But, going back to last season, it took him a little bit to get going, and then they finally, in the back half of the season, he really started flowing. So it's probably only a matter of time when you have a running back that's coming off winning the Doak Walker Award, handed to the nation's best running back. So hopefully we're not the get-right game for Ollie Gordon in this one. But Alan Bowman, with his struggles, has really performed well for the most part. They've been asking him to throw a little bit more, and he's done a good job of that. 60% completion rate, 1,537 yards, 11 TDs versus 6 interceptions. Wide receivers that you got to look out for, obviously, Brennan Presley is one. He hurt us a lot last year. He currently leads them in receiving touchdowns with 4, also leads the team in receptions with 33. But Deshaun Stribling's been kind of their big play guy there. He leads them in yards with 502 on the season. He's averaging 19 yards per reception as well. They also will mix in Rashad Owens and Talon Shetron. But the standout thing to me on their offense has really been their offensive line. They have a ton of experience there across that offensive line, a lot of seniors, a lot of guys with starting experience, and they've been stellar. They've only given up 1 sack all year thus far, and, a lot of that credit to Alan Bowman getting the ball out quick, but they've done a really good job in pass protection as they currently have the highest pass blocking grade in the Big 12 with an 86.8. So interesting matchup here. Obviously, West Virginia's done a good job with pass rush, so that's something to watch for. And then, of course, the fact that they've had a good job, done a good job throwing the ball around, and West Virginia struggled on the back end. Kind of an interesting matchup here. Maybe Oklahoma's strength versus West Virginia's weakness there in that aspect. But, Brad, how do you see this one playing out? How do you think West Virginia's defense could match up with this Oklahoma State offense? Or do you think they're going to struggle a little bit and we might be in for a shootout?
Yeah, I think they're going to struggle every game going forward until they can prove to me that they're not going to. But in this one particularly, I think that they're going to struggle because Alan Bowman's been doing this for longer than most of us have been alive.
Yeah, seems like it.
Playing college football. And, he's experienced and he's got some really, really good talent out around him at wide receiver and at running back. And I hope that our defense has progressed a little bit, but I just don't see it happening. I think that we will be able to control Ollie Gordon a little bit. I think that we've got some dynamic enough linebackers that are going to be able to play at his level to be able to make sure that he can't do what he did to us last year.
Yeah.
But I think to that point, even when we're dropping 8 back, we're still a liability in the passing game. And so as long as that is the scenario, offenses are going to be able to move the ball on us, and that's just how it is. I think that where we're really going to have to focus in is the turnovers. He's turned it over at a pretty high clip this year. We got to get them, and then we got to take advantage of them. We got to score touchdowns. We got to make a big play on them. But we've done – it feels somewhat better, not better. Beanie Bishop had a few interceptions last year. Overall interceptions, turnovers have not been –
yeah, they've not been something
enough
been consistent
to win games.
Before,
Usually I feel like if we're getting turnovers, we're giving turnovers just as much. I would say that our turnover margin has got to be somewhere between -0.5 and +0.5. Like it can't be much more off than that. So when we get turnovers this game, because I think they're going to happen, we've got to limit ours and take advantage of theirs. So that's really, if this defense is going to make an impact, that's where it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be in stopping Oklahoma State's offense. I think it's going to be in playing physical and trying to make a big play.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of am looking at with this game, because I mentioned, it's strength versus kind of weakness, because Oklahoma State, like I mentioned, maybe by necessity, because teams have been keying on Ollie Gordon stacking the box. They know how dangerous he can be from what he did last season. And so that's forced him to pass the ball a little bit more, but they've done a great job of that. And West Virginia, of course, on the back end has really struggled. So that's obviously a matchup to watch. But I'm also going to be kind of keying in on, West Virginia's front seven versus that Oklahoma State offensive line, because I think with our back end struggling, one thing that we've kind of went to kind of alleviate some of those issues has been getting a little bit of a pass rush generated. We've had a great job with TJ Jackson doing that, Tyron Bradley as well. And so we've really been, forcing some quarterback hurries, forcing some pressures, even when we haven't got home for sacks. I think sometimes it's rattled the QBs. We saw that a little bit in the most recent game against Kansas with Jalen Daniels, forcing him to turn the ball over a couple of times with our pass rush, one with the interception, one with the fumble there at the end of the game. So it's going to be interesting to see if West Virginia can continue to generate that good pass rush with this Oklahoma offensive line that's really done a good job of pass blocking. And, of course, Alan Bowman does a good job of getting rid of the ball quickly. That's why he's only been sacked one time. He's got a really quick release, and that offensive line's done a good job protecting him as well for him to be able to get that quick release off. So that's something I'm certainly going to be watching for with this matchup is, can West Virginia's pass rush get home? Because I think they're going to need to. As you mentioned, hopefully you're going to be able to force some turnovers. Maybe that's one way you can slow down this Oklahoma State offense. I know they're probably keying on Ollie Gordon, as you mentioned, and our run defense for the most part this season has done a good job. So I'm not too worried about that aspect. I think that fourth quarter last season against Oklahoma State is something they've probably been hammering home. So I think that they're going to do everything they can to stop out Ollie Gordon. But then you can't let Alan Bowman and this Oklahoma State passing offense beat you. And the way to stop that is hopefully get a little bit of pressure on him, force him to, throw it before he's ready to, force him to go through his progressions. Maybe he makes a mistake. Maybe you get some sacks, and maybe that'll showcase West Virginia's pass rush a little bit. If you're able to sack Alan Bowman a couple of times in this game when they've only given up one all season, that really will speak to West Virginia's pass rush and how improved it is.
Very true.
So kind of the thoughts on that side of the ball. Let's flip it over a little bit, talk about the other way around now. The West Virginia defense, the West Virginia offense matching up with the Oklahoma State defense, I should say. A little bit about the Oklahoma State defense here. Defensive coordinator Brian Nardo, now in his second season there as the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. And, funny enough, Oklahoma State in the past always been known for, strong defenses. But I think that's one reason that's kind of been the catalyst for their struggles early on in conference play is their defense has actually been struggling quite a bit. They're giving up 481 total yards per game, which is last in the Big 12. Their passing yardage that they're giving up per game is 276.4, which is 15th, next to last in the Big 12. For comparison, West Virginia's pass defense that we know has struggled a lot is actually 14th in the Big 12. So they're giving up more passing yards than we are even. And they're also giving up 204 rushing yards per game, which is last in the Big 12 as well. So in all the major statistics there, they're either next to last or last. So their defense is struggling in those areas. But one way that they've made up for that is they have been able to force turnovers. So whereas West Virginia's defense has been bad at giving up yardage, but haven't really been able to force turnovers, Oklahoma State has been opportunistic in that aspect, having 6 interceptions on the year, and they've also recovered 3 fumbles. They're missing one of their best players on that defense. He got hurt in the second game of the season in Colin Oliver with a foot injury. That's maybe, one reason that they're struggling as well. And also Nick Martin, a linebacker that's been very good for them. His status for this game is up in the air as well, as if he'll play on Saturday. And he is second on the team in tackles with 47. But some players that will play for them, safety Trey Rucker. He leads the team in tackles with 63, has an 82.4 tackling grade according to PFF, and an 83.7 run defense grade. Also has garnered 2 interceptions on the season. Oklahoma State, one thing that they're always known for is, those big, strong cornerbacks that'll press you, they'll put their hands on you, they'll grab you, and they're going to play a lot of man coverage when doing that. And one cornerback that stood out for them this year thus far is Corey Black, their highest graded defender with a 76.6 defensive grade. He also has a 78.6 coverage grade and has 2 interceptions of his own on the year. So Oklahoma State, yes, they've struggled. West Virginia should be able to move the ball. But, as you mentioned on the other side, turnover is going to play a part here as well. West Virginia has to take care of the football here on offense. But, Brad, how do you think West Virginia attacks this Oklahoma State defense? Do you like the, kind of aspects of this matchup with West Virginia's offense seemingly, doing pretty strong thus far this year, over 30 plus points in just about every game outside of Penn State. They've really, I think, continue to get better as the season has gone along. Hopefully that continues here coming off a bye week, going up against Oklahoma State defense that has struggled thus far, especially in conference play. How are you feeling about West Virginia's offense in this matchup?
Yeah, definitely feeling more positive about this side of the ball, obviously. To me, it all comes down to tempo and energy. You got to come out, and I've said this before, and I think that it's really the key to our offense, even though we're not a fast-paced team. We've got to capitalize early. The type of game that we played does not allow us to be inefficient with the ball. We got to score. We got to get touchdowns. Like, that's just the kind of game that we play. We hold on to it. We score. We get a stop on you once. We get up by 1 point, and then we hold on to that lead. Like, it's our, like our life depends on it, and then we give it away. But yeah, it's just going to be, can we come out and get off to a good start? To me, I think that's all going to come down to the offensive line. I think it's going to come down to, this is a team you should beat. This is a defense that you are better than. This is a defense you should beat.
Yeah.
But can you not beat yourself? Because that's what we've done, right? We last year our offense was great because they cleaned up on the dumb mistakes.
Right.
Played good, clean football at an elite high level, right? We've not necessarily seen that this year from this offensive line. And so this is a team that you should be able to come in and kind of establish and show that you could do that, because you should be able to do it. By all chance, from what I saw last week, we should be able to run the ball easily. We've got two great running backs. In every way, we should be able to hit them. The only reason we wouldn't be able to do that is because of our offensive line. And like you just said, we're going up against a team that's giving up 430-some yards of offense, 200 yards of rushing, 300 yards of passing. Like, you can see that they're not great. And so if you can't come out there and handle business, keep Garrett Green clean, and get your running back some push against this team, then I don't have much high hope, going forward about this offense. And I think that a lot of it lies in the interior part of that offense.
Yeah.
And so it's that, to me, is going to be if we can't keep them clean this game there, then I think that that's going to be a blaring weakness that's going to have to be addressed as the season goes on. Like, I know it's going to be hard to change up that consistency, but I think that you've got to try something, anything, if you still find a weakness there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. West Virginia, judging by that game against Kansas State last week, they should be able to run the football. They need to get it going. Obviously, last game they kind of struggled to do that against Kansas, but it looks like you've got a defense that's, primed for you to hopefully have a get-right game for your rushing attack, and you can maybe get, all, that three-headed monster that you got there between Garrett, CJ, and Jaheim, all of those guys, get those guys trucking in this game, get your rushing attack moving, which I think is going to be important. I think you're going to want to hopefully control the ball a little bit when you looking at these two matchups, as we now talked a little bit about each side. Oklahoma State's offense has the capability to, put up a lot of points, put up a lot of yards, so you're going to keep them off the field. So obviously having that run game working is going to be, a key part of that. And another thing that you mentioned that I really like that I think is going to be a big factor here in this matchup is the start of this football game. Can you get off to a quick start? Because Oklahoma State, as we mentioned, coming off of 2 losses. Stillwater's a tough place to play, despite the fact that they're 0-2 in conference play. I still expect they're going to have a very good crowd. It's going to be loud in there, but also it's going to be a crowd that's on edge.
They've been on the road for 3 weeks. I mean, they've been away from home, or 2 or 3 weeks. So they're coming home to this. So, their hometown fans are ready to get behind them and show them that they can do it,
Yeah, they're going to be lathered up. They're going to be ready for this game. They're going to be ready for something good to happen. But I think that's why the start is such a key, because they are coming off of 2 losses. They have, had some questions, throughout the fan base, like any other fan base, when things aren't going right, they're calling for coaches' heads. They're calling for players to be benched and things like that. So if you're West Virginia and you can come in and make that crowd, start feeling some type of way versus allowing them to get lathered up with a quick start, then maybe you can, really affect the atmosphere in a negative way, because maybe that crowd, they get that anxiety built up. They're not liking the way things are going. Their defense can't get off the field. Maybe you force their offense to do some mistakes. Yeah, their boo birds start coming out. That crowd's, not feeling the way things are going. And then that's going to, not affect you negatively, but maybe it affects Oklahoma State negatively, and you can get going a little bit opposite of the way that you would expect there. But for that to happen, you have to come out and get off starting on the right foot in this game. 100%. You got to punch them in the mouth, whether it's stopping them on offense right away, maybe a 3 and out, maybe forcing an early turnover, or if it's coming out and having a 7, 8, 9 minute drive, if you get the ball first and kind of stealing their soul essentially to start this game with a long drive to kick this thing off where you control the ball and, punch one in the end zone, and then that crowd's super quiet there for a while. I think West Virginia needs to have that type of start in this game.
Yeah, it's absolutely necessary. And let alone coming into a hostile work environment. I mean, you got to come in ready to play.
Oh, yeah.
Come in ready.
Because they're going to be, like you said, they've been away from home.
Yeah,
and Oklahoma State.
Unless things are absolutely falling apart in the building, but that's when you look at a coach like Mike Gundy and you're like, that's just not happening. Not happening in that building. It's not falling apart in there. That building's not burning down. That roof is not collapsing.
No,
so as long as Mike Gundy's there, they're going to have a chance.
Exactly. It's like one thing that we talk about sometimes when we talk about the Big 12 previews and recaps is you can never count out Gundy. You don't ever want to bet against Gundy. And obviously, him being there 19 seasons now, this being his 20th year, the Oklahoma State fans are well acquainted with him turning things around when things look bleak. So they're probably, more so expecting the turnaround than expecting things to continue down the path that they have in these first couple of Big 12 games. So I think the crowd will 100% be there, show up, and be behind, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. So West Virginia is going to be walking into a tough environment. They've got to be able to handle that.
Yeah, and I think that they said that Oklahoma State is one of 3 programs that hasn't had a losing season, I think, since, a long time. I'm pretty sure I heard them mention that the other day. It's like one of 3 programs, not have a losing season in
yeah, I believe
20 years or something like that. It was just one of those, or a decade or something without,
That sounds about right with the success Gundy's had.
Yeah. But, yeah, just absolutely can't count them out.
No, not at all. Not at all. And, there's a reason. I threw that stat out at the beginning. Mike Gundy has only lost 3 straight games 3 times in his 19 seasons. And the last time that he lost 3 straight games was way back in 2014. So, if you want to make that happen again for the first time in a decade, you got to be prepared, because I guarantee you Gundy and his guys are going to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Damn straight.
For sure. Well, that's pretty much all I got on these matchups. Brad, you got anything else, any other thoughts on this matchup here before we get into talking about the key to victory, and then touch on some score predictions before we take a look around the Big 12?
No, man, I just think that we got to get a running game going. I think getting that established early is going to be important. Being able to throw the ball will definitely come into play, but I think that we got to be able to run. I think that that's something we got to see this game. It's just a dominant run game, because we haven't seen it yet this year, it feels like.
I agree with you. I'm waiting on my guy Jaheim to have his get right game. Hopefully, this will be a great time to do it. I feel like I've said this a lot this season, but Oklahoma State still yet was one of the games and one of the teams that we played last year that we didn't really get to see Jaheim White go against. So maybe they're able to catch him off guard. Maybe Jaheim White finally gets it rolling here after the bye week, because it was kind of the back half of last season. Once he got going, maybe that trend continues. Would love to see it. It's my guy. Hasn't had the best start to the season, but still got a lot of faith in him. West Virginia run game needs to get going, and we need Jaheim White to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So hopefully that happens. It's going to be a major key here. And we're going to talk about our key to victory here coming up now momentarily. And then we will, of course, make our score prediction for this game, how we think it'll go for West Virginia coming off the bye week. But before we talk about our key to victory, got to let you guys know about something that could be a major key for you in your life, of course, and that is Magic Mind. You guys know we're a big fan of that product here on the Country Roads webcast. They've been a great supporter of us, and we continue to support them as well, not only because the sponsorship aspect, but just because it's such a great product. I've been using it myself for weeks now, and the longer that I use it, the more benefits that I continue to reap from it. Obviously, the daily use continues to stack those benefits even more so. Less anxiety, better mental clarity, better focus, and of course, better energy. You can mix it with your coffee. It continues to have those benefits last you throughout the day. So not only is it good in that aspect, but also good for you, doctor approved, all natural ingredients. With each bottle purchased, they donate to mental health charities. And of course, if you try it and you don't enjoy it, which I guarantee you will, and so does Magic Mind, that's why they offer you the 100% money back guarantee within 100 days of your purchase if you're not satisfied. So all kinds of great reasons to try this product, but none more so than the discount you can get from us here on the Country Roads webcast. If you do want to try out Magic Mind, you can head over to magicmind.com/countrylt and use the code countrylt20 at checkout, where you can get 48% off a subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase. Just use code countrylt20 at checkout there at magicmind.com/countrylt. Be sure and get yours today. It's magic for your mind and can be a major key for you in your life. But speaking of keys, Brad, now we got to talk about ours here. Our key to victory for West Virginia in this game against Oklahoma State, coming off a bye week, looking to get on the winning side of things, remain unbeaten in conference play. It would be huge for West Virginia to go into Stillwater and get a win here. But what is your key for that being able to happen in this matchup with the Cowboys?
Yeah, talked about it all episode long, man. It's got to be that first drive. It's got to be coming out with energy. I guess you could call it Neil Brown. That's my favorite go-to when it comes to this, because it's just Neil Brown. You got to have your guys ready.
Yeah.
You got to get this vibe blues off your back. You got to come out ready, prepared. Had a solid comeback against Kansas. Not the season you wanted to start out. You got something to prove. No time like the present, brother. No time like the present. Come out with the guys ready, and that'll say something to me, no matter what. But come out flat, and it's not going to go the way you want it to.
Yeah, agreed, man. Fast start, major key in this game. Agree with you on that one, as we talked about a little bit there earlier. Definitely is going to go a long way for you in this matchup. So like that key there, Brad. For me, my key to victory, I think, is controlling time of possession. I think this is one of those games where I think that's going to be, a big key if you want to come away with the win here. Is at the end of the day, we probably want to have a longer time of possession than Oklahoma State does. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Oklahoma State has a good offense. West Virginia does as well. This has all the makings of being a potential shootout. But when you have an Oklahoma State defense that struggled, plus the way that your defense has struggled, you want to keep Oklahoma State's defense off on the field and keep yours off the field. So I think for West Virginia, this is one of those games where we want to see that, that slow, methodical, those long Neil Brown drives that can be successful, but we don't want them to end in field goals. We need them to end in touchdowns. So I think ball control and time of possession, which goes hand in hand with what we were talking about earlier, getting that run game going. I think that's the major key for me in this one for West Virginia to be able to come out on top with a victory here. But as to if we think they'll be able to do that now, we got to talk about it, Brad. It's that time in the episode. Got to get to these score predictions. I guess I'll take the floor first on this one since you led there with the key to victory. I think that this is an interesting matchup. A lot of interesting aspects that we've talked about going out throughout this episode. Obviously, Oklahoma State coming off 2 losses. Mike Gundy doesn't have a large history of losing 3 games in a row. Oklahoma State's strength of being a passing team thus far versus West Virginia's weakness on pass defense. But then you flip it over to the other side, West Virginia should be able to move the ball, should be able to score some points as well. So I think, much like a lot of these games that we're going to talk about throughout this Big 12 season, it's probably going to come down to the wire. And I do think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. But also, last game that we predicted here on the CRW, heading into that Kansas game, I predicted West Virginia to lose that game. And I was happy to eat some crow and be wrong on that one. And, maybe it's a superstitious side of me that's going to let me follow that with another prediction of a loss here for West Virginia, and hopefully I'm wrong yet again. But I think, Mike Gundy versus Neil Brown, I think Mike Gundy has shown a better history of success. I mentioned, obviously, coming off of 2 losses, he's found ways to win those games and avoid that 3rd loss. And unfortunately, I think he finds a way to do that again. Maybe it's a late drive that Oklahoma State puts together. That passing offense exploits West Virginia's passing defense. But I think in a shootout, Oklahoma State, Stillwater's a tough place to play. I think they'll find a way to get it done, unfortunately. I think it'll be a great contest, though, but I've got Oklahoma State winning 38-35 over the Mountaineers here in the 5th game of the season for West Virginia. Brad, what about you, man?
Yeah, incredibly close scores. I'll tell you that off the jump. Incredibly close scores. Man. Oh, Mountaineer fans, I'm sorry. You're not going to be happy with us today
No, I
because
was
I'm
hoping you'd
not
be the
taking us
optimistic
either.
one.
I'm not. I'm not. I've told you guys from the beginning, and I think that my realistic expectations of Neil Brown, he showed me that he can't come out and be ready after a bye game, and I think that that's all we've talked about, especially myself, is that you got to be ready. You got to be ready to win this game, and if you're not ready, Mike Gundy's going to be. And I think that I've just felt that too many times before, and I've seen it coming off a bye week, and it just comes out flat. So I just feel like it kind of comes out to this point where we struggle maybe first possession, they score, we score, and now we're back into a we got to score back and forth scenario. And that's exactly what Oklahoma State wants. That's not us controlling the ball. That's us trying to keep scoring.
Yeah.
We want to score one touchdown, hold them to a field goal, and then again, we're going to hold on to the ball, score a touchdown. You can score a touchdown if you want to. So we're going to get the football, and we're going to hold on to it, and we're going to score a touchdown. But if you come out and they get the jump on you and you're having to chase them all game, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work for you. And I just don't know if we're at that point yet where we can come off that energy. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to expect it without seeing it yet. So I'm going to go Oklahoma State again. I think that it comes down to the last person with the ball. I think it's going to be Oklahoma State, and I think it's going to be 42-38. I think it's going to be a high scoring game, last possession, and I think that the Mountaineers dropped to 2-3 on the year.
Yeah. Unfortunately, both picking the loss here in this one. Just, I think it's a tough spot for West Virginia with Oklahoma State coming off the 2 losses, having to play in Stillwater, one of the toughest places to play in the conference. You've got a Cowboys team with their backs up against the wall, and Mike Gundy has a good history of, coming out swinging when his back is against the wall. So hopefully we're wrong. We'd love to come on here and eat crow on the review show, and we gladly will if that happens. But, we do want to point out that we do think West Virginia has a great chance to win this game. I think we talked about that going throughout the matchups, that there are, plenty of things in West Virginia's favor. I think West Virginia should be able to move the ball in this Oklahoma State defense, and if they can take care of the football, they certainly have a chance. And as Brad said there, it might come down to who has the ball last, and maybe that will be West Virginia. And Garrett Green has shown great ability in those 2 minute to go, scenarios. So hopefully if it does come down to that, West Virginia ends up with the ball last, but got to call it like we see it right now. And that's just kind of the way we're seeing this one, but still got faith in the Mountaineers, still got hope for this season, and hopefully they come out on the winning side despite our predictions here in this one. But Brad, any final thoughts on this game before we take a look around the Big 12 and make our picks for Week 6 here in the conference?
Yeah, I was going to hit you with the 2-piece. I was going to say, because for one, yeah, we definitely think, like I said, I think if we come out with a jump and you get the energy and like you do what we said you need to do to win, then I think you can see a completely different game. I think that you could see what you talked about where the fans start to turn a little bit. They're getting a little grumpy, a little aggravated. And, our offense, if they can get that energy, they might be able to start really clicking. And that's what our offense desperately, desperately needs. And then if we can keep our defense off the field, then you got a chance to really control and command that game. I just have not seen us be ready for that. In spite of that, I still think it's going to be a one-possession game. I still think that we've got a good offense with great athletes. And even though our defense is lackluster, I think that they try to fit the bend but don't break mentality. We just got to find a few more pieces to fit that mold. So, but to that other piece, if we did drop to 2-3 after this, what do you think the heat is like afterwards?
Oh, yeah, I think it'll be loud. I think it'll be just as loud as it was after that, backyard brawl loss, especially because then you're looking at both games you've played on the road, you've took losses in, and really, I guess it comes down to how do you lose the game? Is it, a one-score game and, they find a way to win at the end, they get the ball last? If so, maybe not as bad then, but I think if you come out and you lay a dud, then you're really going to be hearing some loud feedback from this fan base in a negative fashion. So I don't know 100%, one way or the other, but I definitely think West Virginia falls to 2-3. This is a game I think that now, versus a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people feel like West Virginia has a chance to win and maybe should win. So, if you come out and you lose, yeah, it's going to be some negativity, but on the other side of that, I think if you find a way to win, it's really going to set up an awesome atmosphere in Morgantown there for that game against Iowa State, which we know now is going to be the coal rush. So, hopefully that's what happens. But if not, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there for that Iowa State game if you don't find a way to win this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you definitely don't want to be trickling into 2 and 4. I just was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't know how 2 and 3 makes me feel, because I'm getting similar feelings to where as we get longer into the season, it seems less likely that something will come of what's going on. Like we're more likely to see the season end before we see some kind of sensational change.
I agree.
And so it's just like, I don't think that going 2 and 3 brings me down any worse, especially because I'm predicting us to lose. I'm expecting us to lose. I don't think it kills our season still just yet in the Big 12. I think there's still a chance to kind of get things functioning. I just don't necessarily like this matchup. If it was any other team in the Big 12, if it wasn't Mike Gundy, if it wasn't somebody that, like you said, has not lost 3 games in a row in a decade, boy, I'd be feeling a lot better about this.
Likewise.
I would be feeling a hell of a lot better about this. But it's just this team specifically, and I hate that it is where it is. But, you want to be better. You better be better, right?
Yeah. Well, and especially because with this game looking a lot more winnable than it did, a few weeks ago, you definitely want to come out and put on a good performance. And we talked a lot about this 5-game stretch and how important it was to the season. West Virginia's 1-0 in this 5-game stretch. And I think you're looking at this game as to hopefully, another one that you can get a win in within this 5-game stretch, because I think looking ahead, you're looking at Iowa State and Kansas State. Yes, they're both at home, but I think, most fans are probably thinking best case scenario, you win one of those two. So, if you lose this one, then that kind of really puts you in a negative spot there moving forward, where you're still trying to maintain your position within, staying in this Big 12 race, which, as mentioned, is wide open. And as you said, I don't think a loss here would kill our chances, but I just feel like it would unfortunately dampen the spirit of the fan base, and you're going to need those fans behind you for those 2 home games against Iowa State and Kansas State. So I think this game's pretty important as far as, moving forward in this Big 12 race, because if you can find a way to win, like I said, you're going to have an awesome atmosphere for that game against Iowa State. And then even if you don't find a way to win that one, I think that you still have the fans behind you for that next home game against Kansas State, because they know that, you only have one conference loss still at that point. So you still have a great opportunity, versus if you lose this one and then lose to Iowa State, then you got 2 conference losses, because that's what you want to do. You want to find a way to, stay within this Big 12 conference race. Super important here with the 12-team playoff. Everyone sees how wide open the conference is. So this game's pretty pivotal for West Virginia's season moving forward. Like you said, a loss doesn't knock them out of the race, but a loss could, harm the fan base a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We're going to be watching it with a close eye. Hopefully West Virginia is able to get a road win. Hopefully they prove us wrong here as we've predicted the loss. That's what we're hoping to see, is hoping to be wrong actually this week, because we want the Mountaineers to come out on top, of course, always in a tough road game there against Oklahoma State. But plenty of other action going on around the Big 12 Conference this week in Week 6, Brad. So let's pull up the slate here and let's make our picks for Week 6 within the conference. And we do have a weekday game this week. Houston hits the road to take on TCU in Fort Worth this coming Friday, 7:30 Eastern kick there on ESPN. Houston obviously struggling. TCU gets a good win last week over Kansas. Who do you see coming out on top in this battle of these 2 Texas schools in the Big 12?
Yeah, Houston, again, I feel bad for you, brother. It ain't happening for you this week either.
Agreed. We'll go ahead and agree on that one for sure, because I think TCU, especially being at home, Houston, they'll be good with time, but right now it's a struggle for them. They might be the worst team in the conference this year. Remains yet to be seen, but they're definitely, battling for the bottom thus far. And TCU, looking decent. So I think that TCU wins that one and probably wins it handedly. Which brings us to the Saturday games here. Obviously, we talked about the Mountaineers and the Cowboys, 4 o'clock Eastern kick there on ESPN2, and made our picks for that one. Then we have the Baylor and Iowa State game in Ames, 7:30 Eastern kick there on Fox. Obviously, of interest for Mountaineer Nation. Iowa State currently undefeated on the season. If they can find a way to win this one, they'll be rolling in a Mountaineer field next week for that Coal Rush game. Undefeated would set up a very interesting matchup. Baylor kind of in the opposite position there. They've got coaches on the hot seat. They're kind of reeling right now. They're trying to stay out of that Big 12 basement as well, and going on the road in a tough place to play, a tough environment there in Ames. Do they have any chance, Brad? Who do you got winning this one?
Oh, yeah, no chance. No, Iowa State's going to crumple them.
Yeah, I think that we can definitely say that we safely agree on that one as well. Iowa State, they look really strong this season, looking like an obvious contender here in the Big 12, as we talked about, currently up, in that top part of the conference, those top echelon teams that remain unbeaten, not only in the conference, but remain unbeaten overall on the season. And also, I want to see them win this game because I want them to roll into Morgantown unbeaten, much like was it 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it was, when we had the unbeaten Will Greer team and they had to roll into Iowa State at 5-0, and they hit us with the blackout. Hopefully, they'll be rolling into Morgantown next week 5-0, and we hit them with the coal rush. And obviously, what goes around comes around. Hopefully, if that is the case, but I think that will be the case as far as them rolling in unbeaten, because I've got Iowa State and Rocco Beck getting the win here as well over Baylor. Which then we have an out-of-conference game here. UCF steps out of Big 12 play here for a non-con game as they take on, an in-state foe here. UCF travels to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators. UCF had looked good throughout this season up until last week when we thought they would handle Colorado. Instead, Colorado turns those tables. They handle UCF pretty easily with a, lengthy win there. UCF, though, would love to get bragging rights within the state of Florida, going down, beating a Gators squad that's really struggled this year. Brad, I'll take this one first, man, because I think UCF's going to find a way to go there, go into the swamp, and beat Florida, right the ship, get back on the winning side of things, and get a big win here for the Big 12 over the SEC in that game that will be a 7:45 Eastern kick there, played on the SEC network. So I'm rolling with Gus Malzahn and the Knights to get the win here, but who do you got in this game?
Yeah, I'm not feeling as confident. I think UCF is a bit shaken after, the who's came down there, ruffled up the bounce house, going on the road into another hostile environment, already a bit shaken. I don't think this goes well for you. I don't think Florida's a great team. I would love to see the Big 12 win this one, but I'm not going to take UCF in Gainesville. I'm going to take Florida.
All right. I don't blame you there. Tough place to play. And like you said, it could be one of those situations where one loss, leads into another one, unfortunately, as they had that unexpected loss to Colorado. Maybe they have a little bit of a hangover from it. So definitely could see that happen. I think it's going to be an interesting one to pay attention to on Saturday. And obviously, rooting for the Big 12, but Florida's no slouch, so could go either way there for sure, as we both split our picks there on that one. And then we have Kansas needing a win in a major way, coming off that loss to TCU after, having West Virginia come from behind and beat them the week prior. But they've got to hit the road, go all the way out there to the West Coast to take on the Arizona State Sun Devils there in Tempe, 8 o'clock Eastern kick. This one will be televised on ESPN2. Kansas versus Arizona State. Brad, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to take Kansas. I think they're about due for one. Arizona State's not that great. I think that they're still trying to build up and get a little bit stronger. So I think this is a good game for Kansas. I think this gives them a chance to kind of get back into the mix and see what they can do for the rest of the Big 12 season.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you as well, because I think that when I watch Arizona State, kind of their strength has obviously been Scatterboo and their run game throughout the season. But one thing that we learned when we played Kansas, and I think Kansas has shown throughout this season, is they do have a pretty good defense, especially when it comes to, stopping the run when they're keying on it. I think they'll obviously be doing that against Arizona State. They're desperate. They need a win. I do think Lance Leipold's a good coach. They just had some struggles here. They probably lost some games that they should have won. And I think they finally find a way to get over that hump, win one of these conference games, and go on the road and beat Arizona State. So I'm going to agree with you. And then what is, our game of the week this week is obviously also the late kick. And funny enough, probably wouldn't have been our game of the week without Arizona doing what they did last week and pulling off that big win over Utah. Same goes for Texas Tech, finding a way to win in a shootout over Cincinnati. I think they've done a good job of righting the ship after some really tough early season struggles, nearly losing to Abilene Christian. Their defense looks shaky. Their defense still doesn't look the best, but it could be a shootout here against Arizona. They're in Tucson. This will be an 11 o'clock Eastern kick televised on Fox. So you're going to have to stay up late if you want to watch the conclusion of this one for sure. The Red Raiders taking on the Wildcats in our game of the week this week here in our Around the Big 12 segment. I'll lead off with my pick here first, Brad. I do think Texas Tech has a chance to make this a ball game. Obviously, Taj Brooks being back in the mix for them is a major factor. They've done a good job of giving him plenty of carries this season as well. Hopefully they continue that trend because I think that's probably their path to victory is trying to keep the Arizona offense off the field as much as possible, feeding Taj Brooks the ball. But what worries me is how bad Texas Tech's pass defense has looked. Add that to the fact of Arizona's probably feeling pretty good about themselves after they beat Utah last week. They have arguably, the best 1-2 combo as far as the passing attack is concerned in the conference with Fafita and T-Mac out there at receiver. I think that's going to give Texas Tech a lot of trouble, and I just don't think they'll be able to find enough ways to contain that dynamic duo. So I think Arizona comes off that big win against Utah. I think they come back home, get another win here. I think they'll beat Texas Tech in Tucson. I got Arizona getting the win in this one, but what about you, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is going to be whoever scores 101st wins.
Could be.
Actually, no. I think for some reason I just got a random hair that it's going to be one of those games where you expect it to be an absolute shootout, and then for some reason in the first half it's like 14-10. And you're just like, what happened? You're like, what happened? And then all of a sudden in the third quarter they both score 30. Yeah, that's what I expect is going to happen. So I think it's going to end up in the 40 somewhere. I like Arizona too. I think that in the end of the game, I think that they're just a better team. But really, yeah, this could go for 120 late into the night, 6 overtimes, and 1.5 million points. So
yeah, take the over on the total. I don't know what it is, but I'd probably take the over. Just saying for sure, because both those teams, Texas Tech struggled on defense. Arizona has a good offense. I think it will be a shootout there. But we're both rolling with the Wildcats to get the win there in that one, which wraps up our Around the Big 12 segment here for Week 6 in the Big 12 season. And we've talked a good bit about Game 5 for West Virginia, obviously coming off the bye week here, Brad. Covered the matchups, covered our key to victory, our score predictions. But any final thoughts here as West Virginia gets set to head to Stillwater, take on the Cowboys in this road conference contest?
better be ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Gotta show up and show out. We need this win. Yeah. It's pivotal, and that's a tough place to play. So got to show up ready because, like we said, Gundy's going to have those guys ready. Hopefully Neil Brown has our guys ready. And as much as we've talked about, the bye week struggles, coming off the bye week for Neil Brown a lot throughout his tenure here at West Virginia, I do think that maybe this has a chance of being the time that he does perform better in that aspect, just because Oklahoma State's got to be a little bit beat up, obviously having to play, two of the more physical teams in the conference back-to-back, Utah and Kansas State. I mentioned Colin Oliver's out, Nick Martin may be out for them on defense, whereas West Virginia seems to be, back fully healthy for this matchup. The one question mark that remains is TJ Crandall. We don't know if he'll play or not, but Aubrey Burks is going to be back. Reed Carrico is going to be back. A lot of the guys that were injured in that game against Kansas that we kind of had to gut out a win without, we'll have those guys back fully healthy. So we should be back as close to full strength as possible, whereas Oklahoma State may be a little bit beat up. So hopefully that's something that's an advantage for West Virginia in this one. That is one thing I wanted to throw in here at the end.
Take any advantage we can get.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And hopefully we can get a few of them and we can find a way to get this road win, come off this bye week and get a win and remain unbeaten in the Big 12 Conference. Because like we said, it's a wide open race. And right now, West Virginia is right in it. And hopefully they can remain in it following this game against Oklahoma State. But regardless of the outcome, we'll be back to talk about it on our review and reaction podcast releasing Monday following the game. And that'll be episode 200 here for us on the CRW podcast, actually. Funny enough, already 200 in the books, brother. So definitely looking forward to that one. And hopefully we'll be covering a West Virginia win, and we'll provide the recap of these Big 12 games that we've covered throughout this episode as well. But last thing I want to mention here before we close up shop, of course, is we appreciate you guys tuning in this episode any way that you choose to do so, whether you're on YouTube watching the video version. If you're doing that, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Helps us a ton with that YouTube algorithm if you give us a like on this video. And, of course, subscribe here for a ton of Mountaineer football coverage moving forward on the channel. You can also listen to us on podcast form on any podcast platform you choose, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, you name it, you can find us there. And if you listen to us on that side of things, leave us a rating, preferably a 5-star one if you would. And shout out to WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes as well. We're always appreciative of them for having done that. As always, I'm Jorden Cruz for my co-host Bradley. Until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those